Welcome back, my name's Steve and thank you for joining me on my photography journey. So a year ago, I made a video about ISO and what it was, how to use it and things like that. I've now been taking pictures consistently for that last year. I've controlled my ISO manually on every single one of those. So I thought it was about time for a bit of a recap, what it is, how it works, and a bit more information on how I've used it over the last year. So for context, I've now taken 23,000 pictures with this camera, and I've taken those at 46 different ISOs. The most common ones that I've used are 100 and 1000. And how I do it has always been in reaction to what I want the other settings to be. So generally speaking, I will get my aperture right first. So whether I want that narrow depth of field or to get everything into focus, that's what I set first. Then I will look at my shutter speed. I don't tend to go below 100th of a second because I know that I can handhold that quite comfortably. And then I will adjust the ISO in order to manage to get the picture well exposed with those other two settings. So the rule of 100th of a second, that's something that I keep in mind. I try not to push my ISO too high, but these things are just general rules that I've got in place for me. But I do also break them all the time. It's nice to have these limits, these guidelines, but yeah, I don't stick to them consistently. So what I thought I'd do, I was out in the woods with the dogs the other day and thought that this was a good opportunity to look at ISO in a bit more detail. So we'll have a look at the pictures that I took while I was out there. But first of all, let's do a little recap on what actually is ISO. The simplest way to think of it is that ISO is the volume control for your light in your picture. So much like turning up the volume on a piece of music that you're listening to, it will get louder, the photo will get brighter. When you turn up the volume on music, sometimes in the more silent pieces, you can hear this kind of background hiss, this noise that's been added into it. The same is true with photography and with light. So as you increase the ISO, yes, it gets lighter, but it also introduces more noise because it's not natural light, it's essentially computer aided light to make the picture lighter. It can only do a certain job with the information that has come into the camera in the form of kind of optical light, normal natural light. So it has to kind of make do, and that's where the noise gets introduced. Now, whether this noise in your picture is good or bad is completely subjective. Some pictures look quite good with that kind of grainy, noisy look to them. Other ones look terrible with it. And it can be more of an artistic choice, definitely something subjective, and deciding whether it's good or bad is entirely up to you. So like I said, I went out into the woods the other day, took some pictures to try and illustrate this. So let's have a look at those now. We're going to go into Lightroom Classic, and before we look at these are all taken with my 24 to 200mm f4 to 6.3 lens and my Nikon Z5. Just for a bit of context. The lens was generally set at around about 50mm, just because that's what the framing was. Look at this, was actually 49mm, so I wasn't too far off. I kept the aperture to f8 for these, and then a shutter speed of, like I said, around about 100th of a second. So the only thing that changed between these pictures was the ISO. So as you can see, they get lighter as the ISO increases. Makes sense, doesn't it? So this one is all the way up to 51,200, which is far too bright, far too overexposed. Now, this was my original picture at ISO 1000. So it's pretty well exposed. I think it's not too dark, it's not too light. Then the first thing that I did was I decreased the ISO to see what difference that would make. So this is when we were at an ISO of 500 and then 100. So you can see that it's definitely got darker. The image is just generally hidden. I think that's the best way to put it, in all that darkness. So we'll look at the editing of them in a bit, but this is just kind of the raw, unedited pictures for now. So once I'd gone all the way down to 100, I then went back up. So this is back to 1000, and then higher than that we went to 5000, which is looking quite bright. And then I thought I would push it all the way up to the top. And then this is 51,200. Too bright. far too bright. And if you look at the histograms on all of these, so 1000, 100, and 51,200, you can see a complete difference in what they look like, how they show where the light is and things like that. And definitely that 1000 in the middle is the best one, really. The other way of looking at your ISO is to enable you to get a particular aperture. So this is an example of the depth of field changes that you get with your different apertures. So we'll go through it again in a bit more detail another day. But basically the thing to remember is that the bigger the f number, the smaller the hole that the light comes through, but at the same time, the bigger the kind of depth of field, how much is in focus. That's the thing to remember. So when you have a bigger number, less light comes in, so you need to make sure that you can get more light by increasing your ISO or decreasing your shutter speed, but we kept our shutter speed constant in this one. So in these pictures, we've gone all the way from f4, which is as wide open as this particular lens could get me, then to f10 and even up to f22. So what we did, what I did was adjust the ISO to keep them roughly the same exposure. So you can see this one at f4 and the ISO was 1250, and then this one at f10, which is ISO 4000. So quite a big difference. So we can look into the detail of these pictures to see what the difference is in noise and things like that, the depth of field. Now we'll do a little bit of editing. So as you can see, this is the first shot that we talked about, and this is at ISO 100, and then this one at ISO 1000. So give me a moment just to get these looking about the same so we can see any differences that the ISO makes to noise or things like that. So let's edit these so they're roughly the same exposure. So all the other settings were the same. They now look roughly the same in terms of final outcome through the editing. It was only the ISO that's changed. There is slight difference in noise, looking in these top corners here, but there's not a huge difference. And one thing that we've always got in editing programs is some kind of denoise algorithm, enhance algorithms, in order to get the best out of these pictures. So what's the point of all this? Why am I talking about it? The main thing is, don't be scared about playing around with the settings. The settings are all there to be changed. You can do whatever you like with them. Just because you take one overexposed picture doesn't mean that the next one needs to be. Take multiple pictures with different settings of the same subject, and then you'll learn which of those settings you prefer, which of those are easiest to edit, and which ones just make for a better picture. ISO is definitely one of those that there's no right or wrong answer. Sometimes a higher ISO with the noise that it brings is good. Sometimes a lower ISO and keeping it nice and clean is good. And like I said, different editing programs, Photoshop, Lightroom, things like that, they have algorithms and settings in them where you can get rid of a lot of the noise. So it doesn't matter if you're pushing your camera to the limits, then you can recover some of it. And it's all a learning process. It's one of those things where you have to go out, take pictures, and each time you do it, you'll get better and better. I now know that a higher ISO doesn't have a big negative impact on my picture, which I thought it might do previously. So I'm less scared of pushing that ISO to lighten up my picture if I need to. So whether I need to keep a constant aperture, a constant shutter speed, I know my ISO is quite adaptable and make up for any loss of light that happens because of the other settings. So if you have anything to add about ISO, any times that you've used it to either increased it, decreased it to make your picture look in a particular way, leave them down below and we can start a discussion about it. But otherwise, thank you for joining me on my photography journey. And yeah, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you again next week. So have a great week. Bye.